If you're interested in Lincoln, there's another great director who I said is in my top 3 directors of all time, and that's Steven Spielberg. And in 2012, he made a film about Abraham Lincoln, and it has an Academy Award winning performance by Daniel Day-Lewis. And this is just called Lincoln. It came out in November, December of 2012. And it's just so funny because Daniel Day-Lewis is just so good as this character. And he wasn't even the first one chosen. They chose Liam Neeson, and then after the production drove on with the writing and it just dragged, and this film was in development for 6 or 7 years, he decided to let go, and then Daniel Day-Lewis came. And Daniel Day-Lewis is he's the only guy to have 3 Oscars for Best Lead Actor. And he's one of these guys which is so picky about film roles that when he's in a movie, you're like, oh, I gotta see that. And this was the first Daniel Day-Lewis film I saw, and it's complete opposite of Henry Fonda, because you do not see Daniel Day-Lewis, you see Abraham Lincoln. And it highlights how good of a man this is. It highlights the Republican Party, where we need to do this because it's the right thing to do. He passed the Emancipation Proclamation as a wartime act during the Civil War to free the slaves as a wartime act, but he's like, once the war is over, that's not going to mean anything. I need to make it an amendment. And then he rallies the troops to fight for the 13th Amendment of the United States. This film highlights the last, it's either 2 or 4 months of Lincoln's life, and it's just so interesting because it's all centered around this event in his life with the ending of the Civil War, the passing of this amendment. But you do not feel left out at all, and this has this ensemble cast, which Daniel Day-Lewis is the best part of, and he is the lead, but Sally Fields as Mary Todd Lincoln is a very important part of the character. She is the perfect casting for that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays their son, Robert Todd Lincoln, and he wants to do his patriotic duty and fight in the war, but Abraham Lincoln's already lost 2 sons, and he doesn't want that to happen, and Mary Todd's like, please don't do it. Then you have these great congressmen, Tommy Lee Jones as Thaddeus Stevens, Lee Pace as Fernando Wood, Adam Driver and Dane DeHaan play small roles as soldiers. So you're just watching this movie and you're like, oh, it's Kylo Ren, and that's just so cool how they just got these guys which are now pretty good actors, and they're just doing small role as soldier number 2 or whatever. See, there's so much infighting in the Republican Party, and people like, we need to pass the amendment, and then you got another camp of people in the same political party that are like, no, our priority should be ending the war, it should be preserving the Union. And this is drama from the 1860s that is still relevant today in politics. We have political parties can't get along, there's infighting within political parties. It has some of the best writing that I have in any movie. And it has a lot of great storytelling moments. Especially Lincoln. One of the best movie parts in this movie is when Lincoln is telling the story about this Revolutionary War hero, which is going to negotiate the terms of surrender with the war, Ethan Allen, in England, and there's a picture of George Washington in the water closet, and this is hilarious. It's not appropriate to say on the radio, but it is a PG-13 movie, and this is one of, not just the funniest jokes in this movie, one of the funniest jokes I've heard in the entire life. But then there's another story which is about this lawyer, and he has this parrot, and every day he wakes up and the parrot's going, "Today is the day the world shall end, as Scripture has foretold." And this guy, day after day, he gets sick of this parrot, and he ends up shooting the parrot, and then the prophecy has been foretold, at least for the parrot. And you just see this very important meeting, you got very important cabinet members, and Lincoln just sits there, and he starts telling jokes. And this isn't just in the Steven Spielberg movie, John Ford, Henry Fonda movie. He's in a courtroom drama and he's telling jokes. And I would like to believe that Lincoln had this humanity, Lincoln could tell these stories, Lincoln could tell these jokes. But it's not just Lincoln that makes Lincoln, 2012 Steven Spielberg film, great. Thaddeus Stevens is this Republican congressman, and he's talking about how we need equality before the law, and how you might be a dim-witted person, but if you do something bad, you need equality before the law. And just see the cunning of Lincoln. Well, there's this huge debate going on about this amendment, about ending the war. People get wind that there's peace talks going on that might end the war, and then if the war's ended, do we need this amendment passed? And they go to Lincoln and they ask him, and he writes a letter and he says, there are no peace talks going on in the city of Washington. And you look at this, and as an audience member, you know there's peace talks going on, but they're on a steamboat, and they're not in the city of Washington. So you're like, he outwitted all these men. And you're like, that's what I want to believe Lincoln is. Was he like this? I don't know. I haven't done external research on Abraham Lincoln. But this story makes Lincoln a likable guy. There are some criticisms where it's C-SPAN the movie, and it is Politics the movie. But this came out shortly after I graduated high school, and it's one of these important political figures that everybody needs to know, and everybody admires for what he did in his life, and it spoke to me. If I was in high school, or even in college now, and I had a class on Abraham Lincoln, and they popped this in, and they showed this to me, I'm like, that is exactly how Lincoln, and this is a great teaching school, and there's a lot of curriculums that have incorporated watching Steven Spielberg's Lincoln. And for people that are interested in the subject of history, and specifically the Civil War, and specifically Abraham Lincoln, I could not recommend this film any higher. I think this is one of the great Steven Spielberg films, and he has earned the title to be one of the top 3 directors of all time, in my opinion. And this shows everything that makes him so great. And that's why Lincoln, I give a 9 out of 10. I bought it on Blu-ray, and I absolutely admire this movie.